They said I was a coward for being captured, but no one knew I crossed the battlefield not to surrender, but to die in his arms one last time. He didn't even look at me when they threw me at his feet like some broken trophy of war. General Ash Donovan Young, brilliant, merciless, lifted his boot to my jaw and made me look up. And I did, willingly, because I would rather kneel here before him, even as a prisoner, than rule the world without ever seeing his face again. He didn't recognize me. Of course not. I was no longer Marquis Elliot Wren of the Western Territory. I was just the concubine forced upon him by the Emperor to soften the heart of their fiercest weapon. No one knew I had faked my own death, stripped away my name, my title, my pride just to be near the man I could never have. And now, as he walked away without a word, I bled silently onto the floor of his tent, half from the wound in my side and half from the one in my chest he'd always owned. Ash was furious. He didn't need a concubine. He didn't need a distraction. And he certainly didn't need some delicate, wide-eyed boy trailing behind him like a shadow, flinching every time he raised his voice. But the Emperor had insisted. He will calm your temper, bring you balance. Ash didn't want balance. He wanted victory. The boy called himself Elian barely spoke. He cleaned Ash's armor with fingers that trembled. He bowed too deeply, apologized too often, and always looked at Ash like he was both fire and salvation. It was disgusting. But worse, it was familiar. Ash didn't know why. Maybe it was the way Elian whispered old war ballads under his breath, or the way he traced the edges of the maps with longing, like he knew every village marked on them. Or maybe it was that dream Ash couldn't shake, the one where he stood in the rain, holding a man bleeding out in his arms, begging him to live. And the man had smiled up at him, with those same eyes. Elian kept his secret like a blade under the skin, hidden, sharp, aching. He remembered everything. The night Ash had saved him from a northern ambush. The way they'd stood back to back, fighting, bleeding, living. The moment Elliot, his old self, had almost confessed his love. But then the Western court had declared Ash a war criminal. They'd ordered Elliot to denounce him, to cut ties, to let him die. Elliot had refused, and so they'd killed him, or so they thought. Now, in this stolen life, Elian served tea to the man he'd once sworn to protect, and Ash looked through him like he was made of smoke. Until one night, after a narrow battle and too much wine, Ash grabbed him by the wrist and hissed, "Why do you look at me like you know me?" Elian didn't answer. He couldn't, because if he did, his heart would spill out and flood the room. The truth broke in pieces. A slip of the tongue. A scar Ash remembered tracing in the dark. A night when Elian, half asleep, whispered his old name, "Ash, I came back for you." Ash froze. That name, that voice. Elliot. Couldn't be. Elliot had died. He'd watched the Western flags burn. He'd heard the screams. And yet here he was, in the skin of the enemy, in the clothes of a concubine, in his tent. Ash grabbed him by the shoulders. "What did you say?" Tears welled in Elian's eyes, and the dam finally broke. "I never stopped loving you," he said. "Not when they branded you a traitor. Not when they faked my death. I let them bury me just so I could find you again." Ash staggered back like he'd been struck. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. And then fell to his knees. The great, untouchable general. The man who had built walls so tall even gods dared not climb them. Crumbling. They ran away. Not immediately. Ash still had a war to end. A country to rebuild. But when the peace treaties were signed and the flags lowered, vanished. Rumors said he'd defected. Others claimed he'd died in the final siege. Only a few trusted guards knew the truth. He'd ridden west, into the hills, with a man no one recognized. A man who had once been both his enemy and his only home. Elliot, now Elian, no more tended the wild garden behind their cottage. Ash, scarred but smiling, built them a small library out of old war maps and broken swords. They didn't talk about the past much. It lived in their scars and glances. But sometimes, Ash would wake in the middle of the night, clutching Elliot like he might vanish again. And Elliot would whisper, "I'm here." I found you. To which Ash always replied, you never left. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.